It started with the sound of a potato chip bag crinkling in the dark. At first, I thought it was just the wind nudging something across the picnic table, but then I heard the soft scrape of claws on metal and a tiny grunt that didn't belong to any bird or breeze. My eyes snapped open inside the tent, and I could see the faint glow of the dying fire outside casting jittery shadows on the nylon walls. Somebody whispered, "Did you hear that?" It was Sam, half asleep in his sleeping bag beside me. I held my breath, listening harder. Then came the unmistakable pop of a Tupperware lid being pried open, followed by the crunch of something being chewed with great satisfaction. "Something's in the food," I hissed. My first thought was a bear, which sent a quick shiver down my spine. But the noises were too small, too playful almost. Carefully unzipping the tent flap just an inch, I peeked out. There, perched boldly on the picnic table like it owned the place, was a fat raccoon. Its ringed tail twitched as it dug its nimble paws into our snack stash, pulling out marshmallows one by one and stuffing them into its mouth like it was at an all-you-can-eat buffet. The funny thing was, none of us dared to chase it. We just crouched inside the tent like nervous kids, watching through the mesh as if that furry bandit was some sort of dangerous outlaw. The raccoon paused once, eyes glinting in the firelight, and for a moment I swear it looked right at us, daring us to stop it. We didn't move, we didn't make a sound, and with that it went right back to its midnight feast, our bravery shrinking with every bite it took. The longer we stayed frozen in that tent, the bolder the raccoon became. At first, it had been satisfied with marshmallows and crackers, but once those were gone, it went rummaging deeper into the pile. We had left a small cooler half-latched. Rookie mistake. And that's when the real plundering began. The lid creaked open and out came cheese sticks, jerky, even a couple of cans of soda that it rolled across the table like it was playing some midnight game. "Should we do something?" whispered Mark from the far corner. His voice cracked, betraying the nerves we were all feeling. Nobody answered. It wasn't that we thought the raccoon was dangerous, not exactly, but there was something about its brazen little face, mask-like and mischievous, that made it feel like we were up against something far cleverer than us. Then it made a sound I'll never forget. A low, growly chirp, the kind raccoons make when they're not happy about sharing. We realised why when a second set of eyes glowed just beyond the firelight. Another raccoon, smaller, maybe younger, crept closer, sniffing the air. Our bandit froze, then gave a sharp hiss and swiped a paw at its companion as if warning, "This camp is mine tonight." Inside the tent, Sam pulled the sleeping bag over his head. "Nope," he muttered, muffled by the fabric. "I'm not getting rabies for a bag of trail mix." The little standoff outside ended with the newcomer scurrying off into the brush, leaving the victor to continue its feast undisturbed. It hopped down from the table, dragged a whole bag of chips across the dirt like a prize, and settled right in at the base of our tent. We could hear every crunch, every satisfied snuffle, as though the thief wanted us to know we'd been beaten. The air inside grew tense. We were whispering half-hearted plans, banging pots, shouting, maybe flashing a lantern, but every idea died before it got off the ground. Truth was, none of us wanted to be the one to step out there in the dark, only to find those glinting eyes and quick claws waiting. And so we sat, prisoners in our own camp, listening to the sound of our snacks disappearing into the night. The crunching outside grew louder, almost exaggerated, as if the raccoon was putting on a performance for its unwilling audience. Every now and then, it gave a satisfied grunt, followed by the telltale rip of a bag splitting wide open. We tried to whisper over the noise, but it was useless. It was like listening to a wild animal host its own midnight picnic. Then came the soda. Nobody had thought much of those cans until we heard the distinctive hiss of carbonation escaping. I dared another peek through the mesh, just in time to see the raccoon wrestling with a can of orange soda. It had punctured the side with its sharp little teeth, and now a geyser of fizz was spraying straight into its face. The bandit staggered backward, blinking and shaking its head, soaked in sticky sugar water but absolutely refusing to let go. We couldn't help it. We started laughing, quietly at first, the kind of stifled giggles you get in church when you know you shouldn't laugh. But then the raccoon dropped the can, shook itself like a wet dog and charged right back at the cooler, dripping soda the whole way. That's when the giggles burst into full-blown snorts. "Shh!" Mark wheezed, clutching his stomach. "It'll hear us." But there was no disguising our amusement anymore. Every move the animal made seemed funnier than the last. It pawed a loaf of bread until the bag burst, then sat there stuffing hunks into its mouth, looking like the world's clumsiest chef. At one point, it tried to drag away a whole bag of marshmallows bigger than itself, stumbling sideways like a drunk with a suitcase. Still, our laughter carried a nervous edge. Each time the raccoon turned toward the tent, we froze, convinced it might come closer. Its glistening eyes reflected the firelight like twin lanterns, and for a moment I thought it really might come sniffing around. But no, our masked thief had its priorities set. Food first, intimidation second. The ground around the fire pit was quickly becoming a battlefield of crumbs, wrappers, and spilled soda. From inside the tent, we could only watch as the night turned into a slapstick comedy show starring one raccoon with far too much determination and far too much sugar. By the time the raccoon polished off the marshmallows, the scene outside looked like a battlefield of snacks. Crumpled wrappers fluttered in the night breeze, crumbs littered the dirt, and the cooler door hung open like the aftermath of a looting. But the real spectacle was yet to come. That little bandit had clearly had more sugar in half an hour than any animal was meant to handle. It started with pacing, quick, sharp movements back and forth along the picnic table bench. Then it leapt up onto the table itself, knocking over the lantern we'd left unlit. We flinched at the clatter, convinced it was finally about to come barreling into our tent. Instead, the raccoon launched itself into a frenzy. It darted around the campsite in loops, tail puffed up like a feather duster, claws skittering on the hard ground. At one point, it scrambled halfway up a tree trunk, stopped abruptly, and then slid back down like a firefighter descending a pole. We watched, wide-eyed, torn between amazement and terror. Is it dancing?" Sam whispered, peeking out from under his sleeping bag. It did look like some sort of dance. The raccoon spun in circles, pounced at shadows, even rolled onto its back and kicked its legs wildly in the air. Every few seconds it stopped dead still, staring at the tent as if to remind us who was in charge, then shot off again like a child on too much soda at a birthday party. Our laughter returned, bubbling uncontrollably. The absurdity of it all. The way we sat cowering in our nylon shelter while a raccoon staged a sugar-fueled circus was too much to hold in. But mixed with the laughter was a growing worry. What if it didn't tire out? What if the manic little creature decided we were keeping more snacks inside the tent? The minutes dragged. The raccoon's energy seemed endless, and every sound, its claws on metal, its squeaky little chirps, kept us on edge. At last, after what felt like an eternity, it collapsed in a heap near the fire pit, belly bulging, licking its sticky paws with slow, sleepy motions. The camp fell quiet. The fire had burned down to glowing coals. The woods around us seemed to exhale again, and we dared to breathe, but none of us dared to move, not yet. Because we all knew the night wasn't over, and a raccoon with a full stomach might not be done causing trouble. When morning finally came, it felt like we'd survived a siege. None of us had slept much. Every rustle of leaves, every faint snap of a twig kept us half awake, imagining the raccoon storming the tent flap for a second course. But the grey light of dawn finally spilled through the trees, and with it came a cautious relief. We unzipped the tent and stepped into the mess. It looked like a grocery store had exploded across the clearing. The cooler was tipped over, its lid hanging by one hinge. The bread was gone, except for a single crust left, soggy in the dirt. Half a dozen soda cans lay punctured and drained, their sticky trails leading to where the raccoon had lapped up every drop. Marshmallow bits dotted the ground like snow, and chip crumbs were ground into the soil. And there, not 10 feet away, was the thief itself, curled up in the crook of a tree root, sleeping soundly. Its belly bulged like a drum, and its fur was stiff with dried soda. One paw twitched now and then, as though it was still dreaming of stealing more snacks. We stood there in silence, unsure whether to laugh or scold it. Sam finally broke the quiet. "Well," he said, "at least somebody had a good night." That was all it took. We all burst into exhausted laughter, our nerves spilling out with the sunrise. The cleanup took the better part of the morning. We had to wash wrappers out of the creek, gather what little food we had left, and scrub our hands raw to get the sticky residue off. Breakfast was meagre. Some slightly squashed granola bars and instant coffee, but it tasted fine, mostly because we were still riding the humour of the night before. As we packed up camp, Mark shook his head. "You know," he said, "I don't think I've ever been more embarrassed. 4 grown adults, too scared to shoo away a raccoon." But the truth was, it wasn't embarrassment that lingered with me. It was respect. That raccoon hadn't just stolen our food, it had stolen the spotlight, the camp itself, and turned an ordinary night into a story we'd tell for years. Before we left, I glanced back at the little bandit, still asleep in the morning sun. I couldn't help but smile. Out here, nature has a way of humbling you, sometimes with storms, sometimes with hunger, and sometimes with a mischievous little creature in a mask reminding you who really owns the night.